Welcome. I'm sitting in Fairfield University Bookstore here to give a big old hey to my good friend Lynne Constantine. She's writing as Ellie Shaw, and we all know it's all about the silent conspiracy, moderated, of course, by thriller author A.F. Brady, author of The Blind and Once a Liar. And if you didn't know, Lynne is an internationally best-selling author. She writes psychological thrillers with her sister Valerie, writing as Liv Constantine, and conspiracy thrillers under the pen name Ellie Shaw. And of course, her family wonders if she's actually a spy, never knowing what to call her. Lynne has explored coral reefs all over the world, sunken wrecks in the South Pacific, fallen in love with angelfish in the Caribbean, and she's a former marketing executive holding a master's degree in business from Johns Hopkins University. Her work has been translated into, get this, 27 languages, available in over 31 countries. Without further delay, turning it over to Lynne and Alex.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you, Craig. Well, first off, a huge congratulations to you, Lynne, on the release of The Silent Conspiracy today, book 2 in the Jack Logan series. Why don't you let our readers and fans know what can they expect from Jack this time around?
Well, this book picks up pretty much right where the network left off. Now, it is a standalone, so if you haven't read the network, it's not necessary to read Silent Conspiracy, although background would be helpful. So when the network ends, Jack and Taylor kind of think they've solved all of the problems that were faced by the Institute and by their nemesis, Damon Cross, and they're settling into married life. They've got their young son, and everything's going along just fine until Jack notices this random series of suicides going on, normal, like model citizens all of a sudden going crazy and killing people. So he starts to follow this story, and as he does, he begins to piece together something that connects all of them. And at the same time, Taylor is working on a story where there's a class action suit against a national insurance company. And as the book comes along, they're dealing with chasing each of their own stories, but then some ghosts from their past also crop up, causing some problems in their relationship. So they're fighting sort of global issues as well as domestic issues as the book goes on. And then without giving any spoilers away, they begin to discover that there are probably players and people in common with both of their stories as the book goes on.
And what a time in the real world to be releasing a story such as this. How do you feel that the landscape, the socio-political landscape that we're living in right now, played into all of this?
Well, it's in, whether it's fiction copying, reality or the other way, I'm not sure, but there are a lot of things that seem coincidental. So there's a vaccine in the book. This book was written well before COVID or before any of this talk of a new vaccine came out. And so there is some question in the book as to whether this is a cold vaccine that everyone's taking. And there's some question as to whether or not maybe this is this vaccine that's causing problems. So I'm sure that's probably going to raise questions for people reading it now, wondering if that's some kind of a statement, which is not a statement on vaccines or not vaccines. But I think it plays into the themes in both the network and in the Silent Conspiracy, play into the idea of the manipulation of the truth for an agenda through a lot of different media, whether it's entertainment, legislature, advertising. And so that was a very heavy emphasis in the network, but it does carry over into the Silent Conspiracy because it's still told through these two journalists who are trying to get to the truth, and there are people that are disguising things for their own purposes. And even the story that Taylor is working on, as she's interviewing different people, it gets manipulated so that when it finally airs, a different story comes out. So I think that it obviously, we're all dealing with a society in which we don't know who we can believe and who we can trust. And that's definitely very much a part of this book. But as is most probably conspiracy thrillers.
Oh, the political landscape is a thriller writer's dream. Everybody, is picking up things to get out of their reality, and it's just jumping back into the reality that really exists around them right now as well.
Yeah.
So tell me, what kind of research went into both books of the Jack Logan series so far?
So a lot of research in terms of pharmaceuticals, brain research, psychology, scientific research in terms of like germline therapy, the effect of different drugs on behavior in the brain. And then also I have some friends that are in the FBI, so there was a lot of help with, law enforcement, because there are different aspects of that as well that play into the story. And so I have certain subject matter experts that I talked to that helped with research. And then of course the internet is a huge resource. So anything legal, fortunately my brother is a lawyer, so he gets a call from me and I get advice from him. Trying to think who else. And then also, it's interesting, as you know, I write psychological thrillers with my sister, which are, I think, more geared to a female audience. And these books, I never intended when I began writing this network for it to really be so heavily told through Jack Logan's perspective. It was really more Taylor initially, and Jack kind of took over the story. So writing from a male point of view was a different experience for me. And and really wanting to make sure that I had enough action and going on. And my inclination would be to write a fight scene that would be like a paragraph. And so I have a nephew who reads a lot of those books, and I would talk to him as well. And he's like, no, you need to make the car chase longer. You need to do that. So I had to get a lot of help sort of in doing that and making sure that I was satisfying the need for the people who wanted the action adventure. And then as well as what I'm more drawn to, which is the interpersonal relationships and the thematic issues in the book. So I've tried to hopefully balance it so it's still a fun ride, but yet it carries a little bit of a message, and not necessarily even a message, but just really examining themes and current issues from the perspective of the characters.
Yeah, I think you definitely nailed it as far as the action adventure components. It's got a lot of, a James Bondy feel meets Indiana Jones feel. And one of the other themes that was present both in the network and the Silent Conspiracy is of the sort of religious relics, which to me is always going to be an Indiana Jonesy kind of a thing, which I really, really like a lot. And also both of us being Greek, going back into the roots and the origins of everything, because I believe that we invented everything as Greeks, but just me. And so tell me a little bit about that component and that theme.
Well, when I was writing the network, it had started off, with a very not a relic that was rooted in history. It was sort of something that I had made up. And the editor that I was working with at the time, she was the one who said to me, why don't you think of something that really did exist? I think it would be more interesting if it was a real religious relic. And so it's not a spoiler to say what it is. What I decided on was the 30 coins that were used to betray Christ, that Judas received for turning Christ over. And so that was another thing that I did a lot of research on as well. And we do know, sort of the origin of the coins, and that they were used to purchase, after Judas hung himself and tried to give them back, they were used to purchase a potter's field, which was a burial field. And then there's a lot of conjecture about what happened then, that they went through different royalty, and nobody really knows exactly what happened to them. So the idea, thinking about them, like these coins were held in the hand of this person who betrayed Christ, and it talks biblically about that Satan entered Judas when he held those coins. So I thought the idea of the coins holding some sort of an evil power with them. And again, and that actually was what brought in there's a Nazi sort of subplot in the network as well, where you have, because we know that the Nazis had a group that was dedicated to looking for these religious relics. And we also brought Greece in, that, they were hidden in an island in Greece, which was interesting, and bringing in history from like the Greek church and the Catholic church. And so that's how the coins, they ended up just really kind of taking on a life of their own and becoming a much larger part of the story than I really even had intended originally, especially in book 2. And but it just seemed to make sense to me, like, again, that, if you've had people who have in history for whatever, whether they were looking for the Ark of the Covenant, like in Indiana Jones, or different things where people really have spent their lives like searching for these types of things. So these coins become something that Damon Cross, who is the main antagonist in both books, this is something he's desperate to have, and has gained and lost some of them. And so they also become sort of a bargaining chip in some ways for Jack and Taylor when they're trying to get him, or to get him to do what they want him to do. So it was interesting. And then the Greek part, I thought also about the Greek history, how the Greek church and the Catholic church were one, and then what happened when they split. And so I was able to do something too, where like maybe the Catholic church had some of the coins, and the Greek church had some, another set of the coins, and kind of looking at all of that church history, which I find really interesting. So some of it obviously is true, and then a lot of it is just conjecture and, thinking what could have happened and where could they be. I mean, who knows where they are? I don't know.
Right. That's an interesting point. Maybe something about where they really are could come up in book 3.
Well, we do know where they are in the world of Jack and Taylor, but I'm really wondering where they are in our world. Like if they're
right.
I don't know.
I mean,
be somewhere. Right? Something has to happen.
They could be fakes, and then the real ones could be found in real life.
Right?
Just giving you ideas for book 3 here. Let's
I know. I could use some ideas for book 3. I'm going to call you later about that.
So tell us, what are you planning moving forward here?
For book 3?
Yeah.
Well, that book 2 ends on a cliffhanger, but I won't say what. So there are certain people's lives that are in jeopardy at the end of that book, and I feel like I'm going to have to probably kill somebody else in book 3. I don't know who it's going to be or what's going to happen. And I don't know, again, there's a new, there's Damon, but there's a new antagonist that's going to play a larger role in book 3. So I'm trying to figure, and I'm going to also bring back one of my favorite characters from book 1, who is Brody Hamilton. He's the senator, the corrupt senator who becomes vice president in the second book. So I just haven't decided yet how, exactly what direction they're going to go. I've been thinking a lot about it and trying to, just kind of see what comes to me. So I'll figure it out as I write it. That's like
good. Well, now you should be focusing on the fact that you've come out with this one today, and me pushing you in the direction of the next.
I know. You're not going to let me rest on my road for too long. I know. I've been thinking about it. I was like, for the summer, floating around, walking on the beach, kayaking, trying to think about it, and I'm still waiting for the inspiration to strike exactly on where they're going to go.
Well, that's great. Tell me, do you have in this book or in any of the other books that you've written a favorite character?
I would say in these books it would be Jack Logan. In terms of good characters, he is my favorite. In terms of unsavory but fun, it's Brody Hamilton, because he's the Southern senator, and he has all these crazy expressions that he uses all the time, and he's really fun to write. But in terms of, if I had to hang out with somebody, it would be Jack Logan.
And do you take inspiration from people in your real life when you're developing your characters? Everybody who knows her in real life, it's not about you.
I don't. I mean, in the very, my sister and I wrote our very first book called Circle Dance, which was about a Greek family, 2 sisters, not autobiographical, but we definitely took family and friends, and they comprised the characters in that book. But since then, no, and especially because so many of the characters that we write and so many of the storylines are really, really dark. So fortunately, that I haven't done that. I mean, maybe some of in the Live books, some of the sociopaths might have been a compilation of people that we've come across in our lives, but there's not one person that I'm like, oh, I'm going to write a book about you. And it doesn't, it's mostly from my imagination.
And then, as everybody here knows, that you've got 2 personalities, one as Ellie Shaw and another as part of Lynne Constantine with your sister Valerie. Tell me a little bit about the differences in writing as just you, all of the ideas are yours coming from yourself, and the other collaborative effort, and how there are different challenges in writing those two different ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very different. And in the network, which I wrote first, even though it was a while later that I put it aside, it was a while later that it got published. And then Valerie and I started writing, and we wrote like 3 books together between that and this one. And so the challenge of writing together, of course, is agreeing on premises and coming to an understanding if you may have a different perspective on things, which fortunately for the most part, Valerie and I don't. And so our process it's obviously very collaborative, but it's very iterative. So we sit and we talk and we brainstorm for a long time. And I will come up with one idea, and by the time we're ready to write, it's gone through so many conversations, and it's almost like a stone that gets polished, and it's much better. So when I'm writing on my own, I don't have that other person to bounce it off of. I mean, sure, I can get advice, can talk to her a little bit, but no one knows the character and the story to the same extent that I do as it is with Valerie. So it's more difficult because there are times that I don't really know. I think it's a great idea, but I don't have that same luxury of really examining it to that same level. So that's one difference. The other thing is, on writing on your own, though, I can take it in any direction that I want. But, Val and I have gotten to the point where we give each other so much freedom to do that anyway, that I don't feel constrained, even though I'm writing with her, that I have to stick with something, because if I want to go in a different direction, then we just talk about it. So I think it's more difficult now for me writing on my own than it is because I've gotten so comfortable and so used to writing with her. But the only benefit is just scheduling, because I'm the only one that I have to worry about when it's just me. So I would say from that aspect, then I can, if I want to work for 5 days straight, 12 or 14 hours a day, know that I'm going to get a certain work count done, I can do that. Where we have to obviously manage schedules a little bit more together. So does that answer your question? I think that
definitely answers my question.
Yeah.
The thought of working with another human to achieve an end together with such creative components, you guys must have similar sort of creative process and similar minds when coming together for something like that. Or do you feel that it's more the other way, that you fill in each other's blanks?
It's interesting. It's both. We are very similar in terms of the way that we see the story, the way that we see the structure and the characters, and they develop pretty seamlessly and organically together. But as we're doing the actual writing, there are aspects that she enjoys more than I do, and vice versa. So I really am not one for loving a lot of description. And so when I write with Valerie, I'll be going along, and then if we need to put something about the living room, I'll just put in caps, describe the room, and then I'll send it off to her and she'll fill it in. And oftentimes the dialogue, she not all dialogue, but if there's like a heated scene or this or that, she might say, can you take this and can you punch it up? And I'll do that. And we've now reached a point, even with all of our scenes, we just write until we don't feel like we're that enamored of that scene anymore, and we send it off to each other and the other one will finish it. So it's great, because if you're on the receiving end, you have somewhere to start and to take over. And if you're the one kind of running out of steam, you can just put it aside. So it's gotten, every book, I think it changes a little bit, and we do a little bit more, so that now we've almost reached a point where we can look at a page and we don't even know anymore who did what, because of the way that we've edited and gone back and forth so much. So it's definitely a benefit, where, like I said, our global views are similar, but yet I think that some of the smaller details, we have strengths and weaknesses, and they do complement each other.
That's a great team. That's a great benefit to be able to have.
Yeah.
So let me switch gears a little bit and ask you some of the nitty gritties. What's it like for you to kill your characters?
Well, I know, I was just saying before we were starting how, like, it's not so bad when I'm writing it, but when I had to read it aloud, then I start to think, oh, if it's a character that I care about, it's hard. So there were some characters in here, you know, that I struggled with having to let go. But you know, I just think it's necessary. Now, I don't think I've killed anybody yet that really made me heartbroken, and I don't know if that's going to happen. But the bad ones, I don't really have a problem, you know, killing them off. Obviously, the nicer ones, you know, it's a little bit more difficult, but I kind of apologize to them. And Valerie and I will joke about it too when we have like a bad storyline, and we'll say, you know, well, we're sorry about that. We almost picture the person saying, no, 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 don't do that. But you know, you just have to do what's best for the story. So just suck it up.
Yeah. You have fun killing the bad ones?
Well, yeah, I guess so. I have fun. I mean, it's good to see, yeah, it's good to see justice served, I think, especially today where in story and especially in shows, because I watch a lot of crime shows, that doesn't always happen. And, you know, now there seems to be more of a tendency for people to kind of get away with stuff. And you just don't always know. So I find it satisfying when all is well at the end of the story, which, you know, as you know from this one, it didn't really end up that way. So I guess maybe I did the same thing, that I'm not enjoying what other people do. But that's just what had to happen, I think.
Yeah. Sometimes when finishing up a story, it doesn't really finish up.
Right.
And, you know, the ties aren't all pretty bowed in the end, and it can be difficult to walk away from it. When you finish a book, when it's completed, when the stamp is on it and it's off and it's going to be in the world soon, what transformations do you go through as a writer having completed something like this, such a massive, massive work? Because often with people who are coming out with a lot of books like you do, it can seem from an outside perspective like it's a book. It's what she does. She writes book. But these are huge transformative experiences to put so much of yourself into written word and then put it out into the world. There's a vulnerability that's there. There's a great deal of learning that comes with writing. So what kinds of things do you feel like you've learned, or ways have you changed since The Silent Conspiracy was completed?
Well, I think the one thing that's helpful is that in the publishing industry, you have some time and space between finishing it and when it comes out. As you know, I mean, I think if it were to come out like a week later, it would be much more difficult to withstand criticism and, you know, and bad reviews, because it would be so raw and almost like, you know, having just given birth. But I think by the time like The Silent Conspiracy came out, that I had finished months and months ago, it had been put to bed, and I had moved on, and it was on to the next thing. So I think that makes it a little bit easier to take a deep breath and just say, okay, you know, now it's out in the world. It's just got to do what it's got to do. But for me, it's very hard to let go of the feeling of responsibility in like continuing to, I don't know, see where that book is going. You know what I mean? I mean, my job, I know at this point, my job pretty much is finished, right? I've finished the book, I've done it. And yes, there's marketing involved, but I feel like I'm trying to make sure it's, you know, like I'm trying to control everything, which is impossible to do. I mean, unfortunately, we have a wonderful publishing team, and they do an amazing job, and they're doing what they need to do. And so for me, I have to learn to just step back and say, they know what they're doing their job. You need to not worry about it. You need to be not checking, you know, looking at rankings and worrying all the time, and just move on to the next thing. So that is what I've tried to do, and I've gotten better at that, and to just say, that one's finished, and now it's time to move on to the next one, and, you know, and not keep looking back. But as you know, it's hard, right? Because they're like your children, and it's hard to just know that, all right, your part of it is pretty much finished, other than talking about it or doing a little bit of marketing. And so that's where I am. So it'll take me a little while. So, you know, I hadn't thought about it, but then when it came out, so today's the first day. So I'm sure I'll be obsessing over the next couple of weeks, and looking and seeing how's it being received, how are the reviews, and hopefully it's resonating with people and doing what I hoped it would do.
And what is it that you hoped it would do, as far as the message that you would like the readers to take away from both The Silent Conspiracy and the network? What what message would you like the readers to get from these books?
I mean, well, other than hopefully, first and foremost, just enjoying the books for their entertainment value. What I would like for people to get, if I had to say one thing, it would be just to think for yourself and to realize that, there are many sides to issues, and that, as I don't think it's anything new. It feels like it's something new. We talk about now about fake news and this and that, but I just feel like we've gotten to a point where often we all think that there's one way is the only right way, or that, that everything is black and white, and it isn't. So I think I would say, let's look at the nuance, do your research. Don't accept whatever you hear. If you read a headline or you see a tweet on social media, don't just go, oh yeah, and be crucifying people without looking and seeing what's behind that, or don't be believing, the wrong things. Because I think that it's human nature for people to, unfortunately, oftentimes, and especially people in power, are self-interested. And so they're putting out what they want for their benefit. So I would say, just keep an open mind, try to live with integrity, and try to look into, before you make your mind up about things, know what you're talking about. So I think that would be my message.
A great and important message, and words to live by for a lifetime, I'd say. Keep yourself informed and keep your own opinions. Let's go a little lighter, since we've gotten heavy here.
Right. Yes.
So, who plays Jack Logan in the movie?
I always thought Charlie Hunnam, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, from Sons of Anarchy, would be a great Jack Logan, because I see him as blonde and blue-eyed. But the other, Bernadette knows, if she can maybe type his name. I can't think of he was in Parks and Rec. Do you know who I mean?
From Parks and Rec, just generally?
No. He was married to April in Parks and Rec. I can't think of his name right now.
You're going to make me admit that I've never seen Parks and Rec.
You've never watched, okay, Chris Pratt. I thought of it, Chris Pratt. Do you know who
Chris Pratt.
Yes.
Okay, hilarious. I love that you're picking a very, very funny guy to go into this serious role. And what about Taylor?
I always pictured Natalie Portman as Taylor, but I don't know. Yeah.
So when you're writing characters, do you have a visual of what they look like while you're writing them? Does that develop as you're writing, or do you start with a visual?
It's sometimes I start. It's funny when Valerie and I are writing, when we're doing characters, I'll Google around and I'll send her all these pictures. I'm like, okay, this is this character, this is this one, but then I never look at it again, and I don't really think that I do picture that person so much in my mind. I don't have a complete picture, but I just have a general idea in my mind of what I think they look like. And so Jack, I just see this like it's either of those characters, more athletic, boyish sort of charm, good looking young guy. And then Taylor, just this pretty brunette. And yeah, so I do. I have a sort of a shadowy figure of what everybody looks like, not clear cut. Do you, with your characters, do you know what they look like?
Yes, often they start looking a certain way and then they end up looking a different way. And then whenever readers tell me what they think my characters look like, I'm just, what are you talking about? That's not correct at all. But then it's great, because that's one of the magical things about books, is that you get to fill in so many blanks, and you get to, as the reader, experience it in a way where you have a certain amount of information that's given to you, and you get to fill in the rest of the information with your own imagination and your own understanding of things. And the reality of the world that exists around us right now can be a magical thing or a difficult thing, depending on what lens you're looking through. And I think that reading and writing books can be exactly the same. Your writing, I always found, was a very accessible way of writing, that you don't condescend to your readers, even when you're dealing with something that's difficult. You make things accessible without using a lot of jargon. And I find that that's a very positive way of reaching audiences of any kind of background. So I think that one of the things about your books that I find on both Ellie Shaw and at Lynne Constantine, that's the way that you guys write. To me, that's the way that I feel about it. And I think that that's great. When you're reading, as a writer, when you're reading, how do you feel that you read other people's books? Are you reading as a writer, or are you reading as a reader, if you know what I mean?
I do. I do. I think it's a little bit of both, and it depends on what I'm reading. So if I'm reading in the same genre, I am, of course, always trying to figure out, do I know where they're going? Where's the twist? And if I find inconsistencies in terms of things not adding up, that bothers me, because I guess I feel like, well, I know I try really hard. We try to come up with unpredictable but inevitable twists in both, I do it in Ellie Shaw and in Liv, but I also want to make sure that that it makes sense. And so that it's not, you can have an outlandish twist that's really interesting, but it makes no sense for the character, and it comes out of complete left field. And so those kinds of things, if I read a book, that will bother me. And I don't know that it would have bothered me that much before I was a writer, but because I feel like it's an obligation to the reader to really have things logically, make sense and to be true to character. When I see that not happening, it bothers me. But other than that, I really try not to be looking at it critically, and just to try to enjoy it for what it is, because I love reading. I mean, that's always been my favorite pastime from the time I was reading Nancy Drew books, and always have my nose in a book. So I definitely think it's a little of both. And then of course there's the same thing where you're reading something so fabulous, and then I have to not compare myself and think, oh, this writing is so beautiful, and how can they write metaphors like that? And I wish I could do that. So that can be difficult as well, when you're looking at things that you want to aspire to. And I have to be careful to just say, everybody has their own style, and that's, the point is a good story, right? But there are always things that I think we wish that we could do better. And there are times when I read books like that and I think, oh, I wish I could write like that.
Do you read your books after they've come out?
No, I've read them so many times before they, that between all the edits and then page proofs and no. And I don't even, the only book I've even listened to, because I do like to hear the audio, and I did listen to The Last Mrs. Parrish, and I really enjoyed that, because it became, I think those characters are so outrageous in that book, and hearing them, especially Amber, out loud was funny, and it was enjoyable to me. But I don't. Do you read yours after?
Having it in book form just had such a different feel for me when the first book came out, that I just grabbed it and read the whole thing front to back, and I had forgotten certain bits. So, you get to a page and you're like, that's so dope. And I was really proud for a minute,
Right.
just that kind of thing. But I don't feel that in the future I will, because I'm a stupendously self-critical person. So if I go through and I say, man, I could have done it just a little bit better if I had taken a slight left there instead of the way that I went. And once it's done, it's done. And I think that as a writer, one of the things that I know I need to learn, and I think most of us probably need to learn, and none of us will ever actually get to, is to be able to really close the book once we've closed the book.
Exactly. Well, exactly. That's so true. It is. You're like, oh, I should have cut this. This should have actually. I know.
And tell me some of the lessons that you have learned, and that through the books that you've written and the publishing process, and going from, writing your first book and everything that goes in there, to, collaborations with your sisters, with publishers, with marketing people, with everybody who comes in, because a lot of readers aren't aware of the number of hands that go into every book, the number of, eyes and minds that come into this. And it's a huge collaborative effort in the end. And with everything that you've learned from, the first word that you put on the page to today, what are some lessons that you've taken away?
I think one of the big things that I learned is it takes a lot longer to be finished than you initially think, and that a book, it needs time. That editorial process is just so key. And we have been, and I'm lucky that I have the same editor for both books, and she's amazing. And you kind of are like, as you know, when you're getting your edits back, it's daunting because they're usually pretty extensive. And at first, it's difficult. You have to take a deep breath and look at that and learn how to be objective about, sorry about that, how to be objective and not, take it as criticism, which we don't anymore. I mean, that isn't even a part of it. But oftentimes I've thought a book was finished, and then we go through 2 or 3 different rounds of editing, and I come to realize, wow, it might have been okay even if we had stopped at the second edit, but it was so much better on the third time. And it's just not a thing that you can get. I mean, maybe there are some people who write a perfect first draft or even a second draft, but it seems to me like it just has to mature. It needs that time. It needs that space for you to write it, to think about it, to go back, to talk to your editor, to get your edits and really refine it. And so that has been the biggest lesson for me, because when we wrote a Circle Dance, years ago, we did a first draft and started sending it off, looking for agents. You're thinking, oh, it's so good. How come no one's picking it up? And I think a lot of people that I talk to, a lot of people who are trying to break into writing, that is the biggest mistake that they make, is trying to put it out there before it's ready. And it really does it takes a long time. And the other thing I've learned is that if something isn't working, even if you've put a lot of time and effort into it, to let it go. So for our 4th book together, Valerie and I wrote a whole book. We wrote the whole first draft, and we thought we liked it. And then we went back and we just realized it was just missing something, and it would have taken more effort, and we weren't excited about it, to fix it. And we said, let's just start over. And because we had a different idea that we were excited about. And that's what we did. I mean, and I could have, and maybe would have a few years ago, thought, we wrote 80,000 words. I'm not going to just throw that away. No, we have to salvage it. But it's not worth it, because if you're not feeling excited and passionate and invested in the characters, it's going to show, I think, to the reader. So these are not, for us, it's not just making a product. I mean, it's really putting ourselves into their, creating these characters. I mean, I feel connected to the characters even still, like when I look back to like the last time I saw you and the friendship in that. I mean, they really seem like real people to me. I mean, I know obviously that they're not, but that is the feeling that I want to have when I walk away from my books, that these are people that really can breathe like off the page, that I can think about, and that I can feel proud of. And so if you have to, labor over something longer than you wanted, or if you have to throw it away, I think you have to be, or for me, I'm willing to do that, because I really want whatever my name is going to go on to be something that I'm 100% feeling like I gave my all to, and is the best book that I can put out.
Yeah, I think humility is a major lesson, and that one that we always have to relearn. To make sure that we're sticking to it. But the pride to say, not everybody wants to marry my husband. Not everybody wants to live in my house. Not everybody's going to love my book. I need to love it.
Exactly. You're exactly right. Yeah.
Well, the book is The Silent Conspiracy. It is book 2 in the Jack Logan series, following the network. And I would like to open this up right now to any audience questions that you guys might have. If you want to kick it into the chat box, let me know anything that you would like to know from Lynne Constantine, half of Liv Constantine, Ellie Shaw, a person with really, really just pervasive dissociative personality disorder.
And great. And Alex is a psychologist, and now she's going to have
here
worry.
to help. Kick me any questions you guys have. We're very happy to talk about whatever it is that you would like to know. No spoilers, please. For those who have read the book already, but we would love to hear what you have. So far, we've got a question that says, do you have Val read the Ellie Shaw books before to get her opinion?
Oh, that is a good question. She did read The Network. She didn't read The Silent Conspiracy because I'm trying to remember why. I think just because I couldn't get her a galley at the time. So everything was happening with COVID, and we read so much on the screen, but I did run a lot of it by her. But no, the first time she read it was, and I kind of wanted to see also what she would think without having read it over and over again. So, but my sister-in-law reads most of them. I don't know if Lynne, she's there. You have to raise your hand. I don't know if she read that. Lynne, did you read The Silent Conspiracy before? Or did you? Yeah, I make her read all, poor thing. She has to read all my books like in 3 or 4 times before they're done. She's like almost as sick of them as I am by the time they come out.
And then additionally, earlier you had said that the network could exist as a standalone and you can read the network without reading The Silent Conspiracy, but what about the other way around?
Yes, you can. And you can read The Silent Conspiracy without reading the network. It's sort of like a show where you kind of get the, prior to this happening, this happened. So you can. And I've had some people read Silent Conspiracy and then go back and read the network. But they don't have to be read in order.
Well, we recommend that you read them both.
Yes.
Heartily recommend. So tell me, when you're working on 2 books at the same time, an Ellie Shaw book and a Lynne Constantine novel, this is coming from our dear friend, Hannah Mary McKinnon, how do you keep the plots straight in your head?
Well, I don't work on them at the same time. So we're very careful about our scheduling. And so when I'm working with Valerie on a book, that's all I'm doing. And then when that book moves into edits or at a different stage, then I'll work on the Ellie Shaw, because I can only, when I'm in the midst of writing, I'm living in that world, and I can't have both of them, because if that happens, then Jack's going to end up in one of the Liv books, and who knows where these characters are going to go. So.
Okay, now Jack needs to end up in one of the Liv books right now. He needs to be like a guy in the coffee shop or something. Yes. Do it. Please.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic. So let me tell a follow-up to that question. What would happen if an idea for a Liv book popped into your mind while you were in the middle of working on a Jack book?
I would write it down and call Valerie and say, hey, I've got a great idea for another book. Think about this while I'm doing this. And then I would come back to it.
Yeah, hurry up and write this book while I'm finishing my Jack Logan. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
That's great. Anything else that we have from our audience?
Looking in the chat. Chris Pratt. Oh.
You can ask off-topic questions too. Like, what does Lynne like to snack on while she's writing? These are important questions, guys.
I'm trying. Oh.
Well, I'll keep it open for a couple more minutes. Oh, writing schedule. Bernadette would like to know about your writing schedule. Are you a morning writer? Are you an afternoon writer? Do you go all day long? Do you knock it out and then go and have yourself a cocktail? How does it work?
I come up to my office in the morning, usually like around 8 o'clock, and I'm in here. I stay till 5 or 6, and I write. I do social media. I'll and so it just depends. I mean, I'll write for like an hour and a half, then I'll pop one to Facebook, or I have to take a break, where I'll go Google stuff. Talk with my sister. We usually FaceTime at least once a day, sometimes twice a day. And then when I'm not in the midst, and then of course it depends if it's editing usually that's like an all day thing, because we just like to knock it out. But the writing is probably, when we're in the thick of it, maybe 4 hours a day, something like that, spread out through the day, doing that and doing other things. Oh yeah. But no, go ahead.
Any writing quirks, anything that's particularly weird about you, or superstitions? Being Greek, we exist on everything is either good luck or bad luck. Literally everything. So how do you feel about that? Anything that tickles you particularly?
No, not really. No, I mean, I have to have my door shut. Like I can't, when I'm writing, I have my door shut. I don't like people to come in. But no, there's really no. I don't think I do have any writing quirks, I have to say. And the superstition, no, my mom probably had enough of those. I try to just not allow that to happen. No, I don't think so. What are your Greek superstitions? Like evil eye stuff or what?
I can't function without at least one evil eye on. If you find me outside of summer months, I have bracelets from here to here. In the summer, it interferes with my tan, so I remove them, but I always have this one on.
Really?
Every single room of my house. I will not kill a spider. I warn my spiders when I'm vacuuming because I know that they can accidentally get sucked in. I'm like, guys, I'm coming. Move, I told you. And sometimes they do, and sometimes horrendously they don't, and I have to accidentally kill one, but it's one of those accidental things. I'm full of the Greek ridiculous stuff. You can't pass salt hand to hand. You can't pass soap hand to hand. You can't pass knives hand to hand. I'm constantly just putting things down on the counter in front of my husband and telling him that he's going to kill us all if he picks them up out of my hand.
Wow. No, I don't do it. The only thing is I don't like when, like words. I'm careful about words and things like that. I don't want people saying like bad things, or like my mom used to always say, she would say something, I'd say, take it back. And she would be like, so that would be it. I'm careful about what comes out of, but none of the other. I'll open umbrella in the house or.
Oh, Lynn, you're killing me. Okay. If something bad happens, I'm calling you and blaming it on you because clearly it's your fault. Another question. Do you ever take a mental break from writing or thinking about writing and just clear your head and separate yourself?
I haven't done that for 5 years, except recently Valerie had her granddaughter and her daughter-in-law visiting for 2 weeks. And so, because with COVID, nobody's been able to see anybody. And I mean, normally we're always writing, but like I said, we're in the midst of writing. And I was writing because I said I didn't want her to have to worry about it. I said, don't, you just go enjoy your family. And so then I thought, why don't I just take 2 weeks to do the same thing? So I didn't, and it was very strange for me. I just went to the beach. I did a lot of sitting outside. I read a lot, which was great. And that's the first time I think in probably 4 years that I've done that. I mean, typically don't even maybe I'll take Sunday off. I don't know. I'm always working on something. So it felt weird. And then I was all stressed out that I wasn't going to be able to get back to it, because I think that's the thing when, how you're writing, you're in a groove, and then I don't want to stop. But fortunately, then I came back and I wrote 1,000 words, but I didn't do anything today because I was doing all the social media for the book.
So you did do something today. Look, as your therapist, I'm going to recommend to you, please, to remember to regularly take breaks to rest. And this goes out to everybody who is getting free therapy from AF Brady psychotherapist. Give yourself some time to rest. You had a book launch today. I think that counts as doing something today.
Yes, you're right. Yes. Yeah.
There's a great question up from, again, Hannah Mary McKinnon, who has great questions and great books herself. What is the funniest question you've been asked about your novels or your life as an author?
Funniest question. Wow.
If you don't have one, make it up right now.
I have to make it up. I think probably like from the Live books is who writes all the sex scenes, which of course the answer is Valerie. So that would be it. Okay,
so as your therapist, why is the answer Valerie?
Why is sex funny, or why am I blaming her?
No, I said, why is the answer Valerie? But then you translated that to why is sex funny? So we just earned ourselves another session.
Well, it's just easier. Anything that's at all, embarrassing, I can blame on her, and vice versa if we're not together. So, but yeah, I think that was it. It was one of the things, and I think it was a book thing, and somebody had to vote on who wrote the most sex scenes, and I think they even voted on Valerie too. And she was like, she turned totally red. I'm like, well, yeah, she does. She writes most of them. So.
That's great. It's great to have a partner in your writing so that you can, blame all manner of sins on them. That's a perfect thing to do. And, if you ever do get a negative critique, you could, oh, that wasn't me. That was my sister.
That was my sister. Well, that's it. Well, because when I gave The Last Mrs. Parrish to my pastor, and it was the same thing. I said, yeah, all of those parts, I didn't write those parts. He didn't care. He was cool.
That's great. Well, thank you so much to everybody who took the time to join us tonight. It's wonderful to see all of you. Thank you so much for clicking on the buy link in the chat box on the side of your screen there. and recommending The Silent Conspiracy, The Network, and all of the Liv Constantine books to all of your friends and family. It's great to see you all. Lynne, congratulations again. This is an absolutely top-notch book. I had a great time reading it, and I launched through it in a day on a computer, and I had to be inside on a beautiful day by the beach, so I really was into it.
I owe you one.
And so thank you very much to the Fairfield University Bookstore for hosting us today. This is wonderful. And stay tuned for more goodness coming out of Lynne Constantine, Ellie Shaw, Liv Constantine, all of the people who you embody.
Oh, thanks. Thank you, Alex. And thank you, Craig and Heather and everybody for coming. It was great.
It was a pleasure. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.